Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Let me present you with a simple binary choice. There's two buttons in front of you, button A and button B. You can hit either button. It's your choice. If you hit button A, £4.5 billion will be invested into Scotland, growing the economy, creating tens, if not 100,000 jobs, ending the housing crisis, providing good quality homes all across the country for people who need it, especially the homeless children, and which will get you out of a hole in the ground and raise a lot of tax through income tax and whatever that's going through the system, and make Scotland a much better place to live, reduce poverty, reduce misery, and generally make people a lot happier. That's button A. Or you could hit button B, which would be to not do that, to make Scotland worse to live, to increase the misery, to increase the poverty. Good people, which button would you press? Which button do you think the SNP have pressed? Yes, button B. Let's have a look to see how Scotland have just, or the Scottish Government at least, have just tossed away £4.5 billion housing investment. Here goes. Now, regular viewers will know I get a little bee in my bonnet about housing and investment in housing, and I have said many, many times that bad policies will stop investors putting their money in, risking their capital when they can get better returns and safer returns elsewhere. And here we have a story, as you see in the Herald. Again, behind the paywall, this is what I have to do for you. So it's absolutely imperative on these stories that you definitely hit the like button. And if you are yet to sign up, do please hit the subscribe button, because it just helps the channel grow, and it helps me keep bring these stories, because these paywalls, they all mount up. And so I need the views to help pay for the paywalls. So absolutely, if you can, do please subscribe and hit like. Now, anger indeed, as John Swinney fails over a £4.5 billion housing loss. This is the investors not investing because they see Scotland as far too risky, not giving enough return, the failure of things like rent controls, planning, the SNP not allowing it because they want their little cut on top because they're like an organised crime outfit. So we'll have a look and go through this. But it's, as I've been saying for some time, and I hate the bloody Herald for this, I'm moving it across. It's been, as I said, for some time. It's just the policy of failure, and it's decisions that they're making on purpose. They know that if they don't do this, this is going to happen. So they are actively working against the best interests of the people of Scotland. £4.5 billion worth of investment in housing across Scotland, and they chose to go the other way and then moan that there aren't enough houses. Weird, isn't it? And yet they've made this decision. So the SNP government's failure to address uncertainty for investors threatens to derail £4.5 billion worth of investment around housing in Scotland. The news comes after a damp squib parliament announced disappointed industry was expecting a tone of urgency reflective of Scotland's current housing situation. And as we know, the housing situation in Scotland is dire and dying and getting worse. Every day, more private landlords are getting out of the sector. Nobody is building secure homes. Nobody's building social housing. Very few people are actually building real normal houses for commercial sale, simply because they're having and forced to build them with heat pumps, and nobody wants to buy heat pump houses. So capital's getting tied up, people are being laid off, the tradesmen are going south, and like I said before, probably never to return. And so what's happening? The whole of the Scottish building industry is dying on its arse as a direct result of SNP policy that they know what they're doing. They know this will kill. Industry chiefs delivered a stark warning If the First Minister isn't willing to invest his political capital into a new approach, then existing structures simply cannot deliver the response Scotland needs. Part of that response is get rid of heat pumps, get rid of rent caps. Encourage builders in, give them tax breaks, get them in, get them building, and eradicate Scotland's housing emergency by providing houses. It ain't hard. Housing Minister Paul McLennan said when he delivered his ministerial statement in Holyrood on Thursday that work to introduce a tenure-neutral housing standard would be rescheduled. And by rescheduled, he means abandoned. He outlined an ambition to reduce the number of children living in temporary accommodation. There's only one way you can do that, McLennan. Build houses for these children. And you have literally just said we're not. Yes, we want to reduce the number of children that are effectively homeless. And how are you going to do that? By doing sod all and actually working to make the situation worse. That's their plan, apparently. A commitment to housing as a national outcome and the potential of the Housing Investment Task Force were welcomed, but ain't going to happen. The industry is reeling from rent controls. Thank you. And I said about this all along. Introduced in 2022 that were to be temporary, but are now being factored into Scotland's long-term housing plan. Rent controls destroy housing. People need an increase of rent each year. Small, moderate, doesn't have to be big. But that moderate increase in line with inflation. And I would suggest, you have a inflation plus 1% maximum. But at least it's covering that. Covering inflation plus 1. And that increases over time. And that gives a return in investment on these big companies that want to invest £4.5 billion to sort out the problem. They seem to think that business is bad. Capitalism and business, it's bad. How else are you building these houses? Pixies? Little elves come out at night and build them, do they? No. Anyway, this rent control has been blamed for the near halting of housing developments across Scotland, with many changed to student accommodation, which is also required, but within the housing balance. And the thing about student accommodation is because it's temporary and deemed as temporary accommodation, you can put the rents up. There's no rent control on that, which is why they're doing that, or they're doing Airbnb. They're doing all sorts of things where they can get short-term and just put the rents up as and when, because long-term rental is now a dead market in Scotland. There's no return. Yes, you can't put your rents up, but wait, the insurance has gone up, maintenance has gone up, all these things have gone up. Yes, but it's called tough buggery. You're not allowed to put your rents up. Oh, that's fine. You out. I'm selling the house. But wait, now we haven't got enough houses. Yeah, should have thought of that before you made such dicks of yourself by making the worst possible decisions at every stage. But that's the SNP way. Investors pulled out of housing deals on the day the Scottish Government announced the move. So they're saying they're going to be rescheduling it. That's fine. And every single investor walked away there and then. Teaches them a lesson. Don't be stupid. Don't vote with what goes in here. Vote with what goes on in here. But the trouble is, when you look at your average SNP politician, what's in there? Dog shit. They've got no minds whatsoever. David Mellish, director of the Scottish Property Federation, said that the response to the current housing emergency did not address the uncertainty for investors caused by the current housing bill. He said the provision in the bill for rent control could mean a 7-year or 8-year hiatus in rent control policy across the country, and with a potential rent freeze for 5 years of that. It says this makes no provision for building, retrofitting or professionally managing rented homes. And unfortunately, investors are clearly seeing the proposals as uninvestable. I have been saying this for 2 years. And people are now starting to see I was right. And I keep saying it, 35 years in accounts in the construction industry and dealing with matters exactly like this. I know whereof I speak. He said just last week, we saw a scheme previously earmarked as the largest build-to-rent scheme in Scotland, in excess of 800 new bespoke private homes for rent and located in the heart of Glasgow. This has now been sold by its investor, with the purchaser looking to change the site use. This is but one of several former housing for site rents that are being moved to other uses. Thousands upon thousands of houses were going to be built, and the day the Scottish Government said, this is our new policy, everyone went, Boom. And they ran. And they took their money with them. And they thought, no effing way are we investing in Scotland, because we will never see a return on our investment. And they ran, and they're going to do something else. They'll probably invest in England. Tell you what, north of England is going to have a housing boom. And all those people up in the north go, oh, it's a bit tight for housing around it. Oh, look, all of a sudden, loads of houses. Brilliant. Well done, SNP. And all you SNP voters who are sitting there thinking, oh, it's terrible housing problems, terrible, oh, our Gwendolyn, she can't get a house and all that. Well done. You've done that. You put your little X in that little yellow box. Yes, the SNP are brilliant. Are they? Well, look at all those homeless children. SNP voters calls that. Anyway, he said, and carrying on this, he said, it's clear that the previously recorded or reported warnings of some 3 billion of housing investment covering 17,000 homes of various tenure are now at risk of not happening at all. This investment is estimated to rise to £4.5 billion of economic value over a 10-year period if it's encouraged to come forward, providing the vital boost to the Scottish economy and, of course, reducing the housing crisis. But because of SNP policy, it just ain't going to happen. There you are. That's the man who right now, has killed 17,000 on one day, in one day, killed 17,000 houses. Now, you'd have got every homeless child in Scotland housed. He killed the idea. He knew what he was doing. He made that decision. And he said, fuck you, homeless people. And £4.5 billion going into the economy. That's a lot of tax coming back out into the exchequer. That's a lot of people employed. That's a lot of money going into local economies. Everybody lifts. A rising tide lifts all boats. Their policy, SNP actual policy, screwing you over. Enemies of the people. 17,000 homes one day. Are you still going to vote for him, SNP voter? Oh yes, of course you are. Because what's in here? Nothing. You're mental. Coming up. I'm appealing to you. You hate watchers. I know there's SNP voters who watch me because you hate me. I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. And we've just seen it there. One action. One policy on one day. 17,000 houses gone. If you say 3 people a house, let's say 50, 60,000 people taken off the homelessness list. All 10,000 homeless children housed. £4.5 billion removed. Investors fleeing. And this is what happens when people like him, Marxists, are put in charge of an economy and say, no, we want homelessness, we want poverty, we want misery, so that we can point to Westminster and say, they've done that. No, Swinney, you've done that. Swinney in one day has done that. Don't vote for him. For God's sake, get him out, send the message, and make sure that nobody is allowed to destroy lives as much as the SNP have ever again. Thank you very much for listening. I'm coming and I'm out.